Why will you bring a girl this beautiful, this vibrant as a maid, into a house with a man like Osas?
Tare, you see movies too much.
Shine your eyes, Ify. Before you know it, the person you brought to wash your plates will be the one trying to wear your wedding ring.
Ah, Tare, you think so?
I know so.
The sun was a giant orange ball hanging low over the city of Lagos, turning the sky into a mix of purple and gold. Inside a gated compound that was quiet and peaceful, a beautiful house stood tall. This was the home of Ify and Osas. Inside the parlor, the air was cool and smelled like expensive flowers. Ify was sitting on a deep, soft sofa. She was a beautiful woman with a face that always looked like she was about to smile. Her hair was neatly styled, and she wore a yellow maternity gown that flowed around her. She sat there quietly, rubbing her pregnant belly with her right hand. Ify felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had a high-paying job, a house that looked like a palace, and a husband named Osas who treated her like a queen. But Ify's heart was too soft. She believed that everyone was as kind as she was, and she did not know that her kindness was about to open the door to a big problem. Outside the house, the sound of a car engine broke the silence. A black SUV pulled into the driveway and stopped. The driver's side door opened, and Osas stepped out. He was a tall, vibrant man with broad shoulders and a confident walk. He looked every bit like the successful man he was. He went to the back of the car and opened the door for the person he had brought all the way from the village. Zeno stepped out of the car. She was a young woman, tall and slim, with skin as dark and smooth as charcoal. She was wearing a faded flowered wrapper and a simple blouse that had seen better days. In her hand, she clutched a small blue nylon bag. That bag held everything she owned, 2 pairs of clothes and a few personal things. Back in the village, Zeno's life had become a nightmare. After her father and mother died, her uncles showed her their wicked side. They told her that because she was a woman, she had no right to stay in her father's house. They wanted to grab the land and the house for themselves, so they tried to chase her out into the streets. When Ify had traveled to the village 2 weeks ago, her mother told her about Zeno's suffering. Ify had cried when she heard the story. She immediately told her mother that she would take Zeno to the city to live with her. She wanted to save the girl from the hands of her greedy uncles. Osas led Zeno into the house. As they walked into the parlor, Zeno stopped and looked around with wide eyes, but she quickly dropped her head. She acted very humble. She kept her eyes on the floor, looking at the polished marble tiles. She knelt down completely on the floor to greet Ify, her voice trembling as she thanked her for bringing her to the city. To Ify, Zeno looked like a helpless orphan who would be grateful for even a plate of rice. Just as Zeno was being led upstairs to the guest room by one of the other house staff, Ify's best friend, Tare, walked in. Tare was a woman who was very sharp. She didn't just look at people, she studied them. She sat down on the sofa opposite Ify and watched Zeno's back until the girl disappeared up the stairs. Tare waited until the room was quiet before she spoke. She leaned forward and asked Ify why she would bring such a big girl into her home. Tare pointed out that Zeno was not a small child, but a fully grown, beautiful woman. She warned Ify that bringing a vibrant girl like that into a house with a young, successful husband like Osas was like putting a goat and a piece of yam in the same room. She told Ify to shine her eyes because she was opening her door to serious trouble. Ify just laughed and shook her head. She told Tare that she was overthinking things as usual. Ify explained that she had brought Zeno because the girl had no one else in the world to help her. She said Zeno was like a younger sister to her, and that Osas was a God-fearing man who would never look at a house girl in a bad way. Ify felt proud of herself. She truly believed she was doing a great thing by changing Zeno's life. Zeno stood in the middle of the guest room, and for a long time, she did not move. She felt like she was in a dream. She reached out and touched the bed sheets. They were so soft that they felt like water against her skin. She looked up at the curtains. They were heavy and expensive, blocking out the harsh sun of the city. Back in the village, the only thing that blocked the sun was a torn cloth or an old wooden board. She walked slowly toward the large mirror on the wall. She had never seen her own reflection so clearly. In the village, she only saw herself in broken pieces of glass. or in the reflection of a bucket of water. Now, she saw a young woman with smooth, dark skin and eyes that were full of life. She realized that she was not just a village girl anymore, she was in a palace. The door to the guest room was slightly open, and from where she stood, she could see directly into Ife's master bedroom. Her eyes caught something sparkling. It was the gold jewelry lying on Ife's dressing table. The sunlight from the window hit the gold, making it shine so brightly that it hurt Zeno's eyes. There were necklaces that looked like woven sunlight and earrings that twinkled like stars. Zeno felt a sharp pain in her chest, but it was not the pain of sickness, it was the pain of envy. She thought to herself that if the guest room was this big and beautiful, then the madame's own room must be like heaven on earth. She wondered why one woman should have so much while another woman had nothing. She looked back at the gold jewelry. She didn't just want to touch it, she wanted it to belong to her. She didn't want to be the one who cleaned the room. She wanted to be the one who slept in the big bed. She wanted to be the one that Osas held at night. A dark thought, as cold as ice, settled in her heart. Zeno decided that she would not be a guest or a sister in this house. She would find a way to take Ife's place. She would become the woman that Osas came home to, and all that gold would eventually hang around her own neck. When Osas came home later that evening, Zeno made sure she was the first person he saw. She ran to the door to take his bag. She bowed her head and greeted him with a very soft voice. Osas thanked her and went to hug his wife, but Zeno stayed there for a moment, smelling the expensive cologne on his suit. It was the smell of money and power, and she wanted it for herself. Over the next few weeks, Zeno began her plan. She was very quiet and very helpful. She made sure that the house was always clean and that the food was always ready before Ife could even ask. She studied Ife. She watched how Ife talked, how she dressed, and what kind of soup Osas liked the most. One afternoon, Ife was taking a nap in the bedroom. Zeno went into the kitchen to prepare the evening meal. She knew that Osas loved pounded yam with egusi soup. She spent hours making sure the soup was perfect, using the best pieces of meat and just the right amount of seasoning. When Osas came home and tasted the food, he was very impressed. He told Ife that the new girl was a very good cook. Ife was happy to hear this. She thought she had made the right decision by bringing Zeno to the city. But Zeno was starting to do things that Ife did not see. When she did the laundry, she would take Ife's expensive perfumes and spray a little bit on herself when no one was looking. She would stand in front of the long mirror in the hallway and pretend she was the madam of the house. She began to feel that Ife was in her way. She felt that Ife did not deserve a man like Osas because Ife was too soft and too trusting. One day, Zeno went to a part of the city she did not know very well. She found a small shop where an old woman sold different kinds of roots and liquids in small bottles. Zeno told the woman she had a problem with pests in her house and she needed something very strong that would work slowly. The old woman gave her a small bottle with a green liquid inside. She told Zeno to be very careful with it. Zeno took the bottle home and hid it inside her pillowcase. Every morning, she was the one who prepared Ife's herbal tea. Ife liked the tea because she believed it was good for the baby in her womb. Zeno would wait until the kitchen was empty, then she would put 2 small drops of the green liquid into the cup. It did not have a smell, and it did not change the taste of the tea. After a few days of taking the tea, Ife began to feel very tired. At first, she thought it was just the pregnancy. She told Osas that the baby was growing fast and taking all her energy. Osas would tell her to go and lie down, and he would call Zeno to bring her water or fruit. This was exactly what Zeno wanted. Every time Ife was sleeping, Zeno had more time to be alone in the living room with Osas. Zeno started to change the way she dressed around the house. She stopped tying her wrapper tightly like a village girl. Instead, she started wearing leggings and small tops that showed her shape. Whenever Osas was sitting in the parlor reading his news on his tablet, Zeno would find a reason to be there. She would be dusting the television or cleaning the glass table right in front of him. She would bend down low, making sure that if he looked up, he would see her. One evening, Osas was sitting alone because Ife had gone to bed early with a headache. Zeno walked into the room carrying a tray with a cold glass of juice. She didn't just drop it on the table and leave. She stood there for a moment, looking at him with eyes that seemed very sad. Osas looked up and asked her if anything was wrong. Zeno sighed and said that she was just worried about Big Mommy. She said that she had never seen someone so weak during pregnancy, and that she was doing her best to make sure the house was running well so Osas would not be stressed. She told him that a big man like him deserved to have a peaceful home where he could relax after a long day of work. Osas thanked her and said he appreciated her hard work. Zeno smiled and moved a bit closer. She told him that back in the village, women were taught how to take care of their husbands with special meals and massages. She asked if his feet were aching and if he would like her to bring warm water to soak them. Osas felt a bit uncomfortable. He told her it was fine and that she should go and rest. Zeno didn't argue, but as she walked away, she made sure to swing her hips in a way that made Osas watch her until she turned the corner. As the weeks went by, Ife's health got worse. She was losing weight instead of gaining it. Her skin, which used to be very bright, was now looking dull and grey. She went to the hospital many times, but the doctors could not find exactly what was wrong. They told her to rest more and eat well. Ife didn't know that the person who was helping her eat was the one destroying her from the inside. Zeno became even more wicked in her heart. She decided it was time to end the pregnancy. She knew that as long as that baby was alive, Osas would always be tied to Ife. One morning, instead of 2 drops of the green liquid, Zeno poured a whole spoonful into Ife's cup. That afternoon, while Osas was at work, a loud scream came from the master bedroom. Zeno was in the kitchen, and when she heard the scream, she didn't run immediately. She stood still, and a small, cold smile came to her face. She waited for a full minute before she ran upstairs, pretending to be in a panic. She found Ife on the floor, clutching her stomach. There was blood on the white rug. Ife was crying and calling for Osas. Zeno knelt down and started shouting for help, but she made sure she was the only one there. She didn't call the neighbor or the estate security immediately. She watched Ife suffer for a while, telling her that everything would be okay, while secretly hoping the baby was already gone. By the time they got Ife to the hospital, it was too late. The doctor came out with a long face and told Osas that they had lost the baby. Osas sat down on the hospital bench and put his head in his hands. He began to sob quietly. Zeno was standing in the corner of the waiting room. She put her hand on her chest and started crying loudly, even louder than the people who were actually grieving. She went over to Osas and knelt at his feet. She started telling him how sorry she was, and how she would do anything to help him bear the pain. She told him that God knew best, and that maybe Ife was too weak to carry a child. When Ife came back home from the hospital, she was like a shadow. She didn't want to talk to anyone. She stayed in her room with the curtains closed. She felt like she had failed her husband. Zeno took this as her biggest opportunity. She became the acting wife of the house. She was the one who decided what would be cooked. She was the one who welcomed Osas at the door, and she was the one who made sure his clothes were ironed and ready. Tara came to visit one Sunday afternoon. She saw the way Zeno was moving around the house, carrying the keys to the store and giving orders to the dry cleaner. Tara went straight to Ife's room. She found Ife lying in the dark. Tara told her that she needed to wake up. She told Ife that her house was being taken over by the girl she brought from the village. She told Ife that Zeno did not look like a grieving house help. She looked like a woman who was celebrating a victory, but Ife was too depressed to listen. She told Tara that Zeno was the only reason the house was still standing and that she should leave the poor girl alone. Tara left the house that day with a very heavy heart. She knew that something was very wrong. She decided that if Ife would not save herself, she would have to find a way to help her. Tara started to think. She wondered how a healthy woman could just lose a baby and become so sick without a clear reason. She decided to start watching Zeno more closely, even if she had to do it from outside the house. One night, Osas was sitting in the parlor very late. The house was silent except for the sound of the air conditioner. He was holding a photo of the ultrasound scan of the baby they had lost. His heart was heavy. He loved Ify, but he felt like he was losing her too. She was always sleeping or crying, and the house felt cold and empty. Zeno saw him through the gap in the door. She had been waiting for this moment. She went to her room and took off her house clothes. She put on one of the silk nightgowns she had stolen from Ify's wardrobe. She loosened her hair so it fell over her shoulders. She rubbed some of Ify's expensive oil on her skin so she would glow under the parlor light. She walked into the parlor quietly. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat on the rug near Osas's feet. Osas looked down and was surprised to see her wearing his wife's clothes, but before he could speak, Zeno started to cry. It was a soft, gentle cry. She told him that it broke her heart to see a great man like him suffering alone in the dark. She said that a man like him needed a woman who was strong, a woman who could give him many children and keep his home happy. She reached out and rested her hand on his knee. She told him that she had been in love with him from the first day she arrived from the village. She said that Ify was a good woman, but she was too sickly and too weak for a man with so much fire in him. Zeno moved closer, her voice becoming a whisper. She told him that she was ready to be whatever he wanted her to be. Osas was confused. He was a man in pain, and for a second, the attention from a beautiful girl felt like a bandage on a wound. But then, he looked at the nightgown she was wearing. He remembered the day he bought that gown for Ify during their honeymoon in Dubai. Seeing it on Zeno made him feel a sudden shiver of disgust. He pushed her hand away and stood up. He told her to go back to her room and take off that dress. He told her never to speak to him like that again. Zeno went back to her room, but she was not ashamed. She was angry. She felt that Osas was being stubborn. She decided that the only way he would ever look at her was if Ify was completely out of the picture. She went to her pillow and took out the green bottle. There was only a little bit left. She decided that tomorrow morning, she would put everything that remained into Ify's bowl of pepper soup. While Zeno was planning her final move, Tare was busy too. Tare had a cousin who worked in a laboratory. She had told him about her friend who was mysteriously sick and lost a pregnancy. The cousin told her that many things could cause that, but if someone was being poisoned slowly, it would show in their blood or in the things they were eating. The next morning, Tare arrived at the house very early, even before Osas left for work. She told the security man at the gate that she had a surprise breakfast for Ify. She walked into the kitchen and saw Zeno standing by the stove. Zeno was so busy pouring the last of the green liquid into a bowl of soup that she didn't hear Tare come in. Tare stood by the door and watched. She saw Zeno hide the empty bottle in the pocket of her apron. Tare's heart began to beat very fast. She realized that she had been right all along. This girl was not just a maid, she was a killer. Zeno turned around and saw Tare. She jumped and almost dropped the bowl. She tried to smile and greet Tare, but Tare did not smile back. Tare asked her what she had just put in the soup. Zeno started to stammer. She said she was only adding extra seasoning to make Big Mommy feel better. Tare didn't argue. She just walked forward and tried to take the bowl. Zeno held onto it tightly. The two women began to struggle for the bowl in the middle of the kitchen. Osas heard the noise and came running from the dining room. He asked them what was going on. Tare pointed at Zeno and told Osas that the girl had been poisoning Ify. She told him to look in Zeno's apron pocket. Zeno started to scream and cry. She fell to her knees and swore by everything she knew that Tare was lying because she hated her. She told Osas that Tare was just jealous of how well she was taking care of the house. Osas looked from Tare to Zeno. He remembered the small bottles he had seen in the trash. He remembered Zeno wearing his wife's clothes the night before. He reached into Zeno's apron and pulled out the small empty green bottle. The label was torn, but the smell was sharp and chemical. Osas took the bowl of soup and looked at Zeno. He told her that if the soup was truly just seasoned, she should sit down and eat it all herself. Zeno's face went pale. She started to shake. She couldn't move. She knew that if she drank that soup, she would suffer the same pain she had given to Ify. She broke down and started confessing. She screamed that it was because she loved him. She said that she deserved the good life more than Ify did. She said the village had been a prison and she was never going back. Osas didn't say a word. He went upstairs and woke Ify up. He carried her down to the parlor. When Ify saw Zeno on the floor and heard what she had done, she couldn't even cry. She just stared at the girl she had tried to save. She realized that her mother's village stories had not told her the whole truth about Zeno's heart. Osas called the police. As they were dragging Zeno out of the compound, she was still shouting. She wasn't shouting for forgiveness. She was cursing Ify, telling her that she would never be able to have another child anyway. The house became very quiet after the police car left. Osas sat on the floor and held Ify's hands. He apologized for not seeing the danger sooner. Tara stayed with them and helped them pour away all the food and tea that Zeno had prepared. It took a long time, but with Tara's help and Osas's love, Ify began to eat again. She began to walk in the garden. The gray color left her skin and her eyes began to shine again. They realized that sometimes the people we try to pull out of the dirt are the ones who want to pull us into it. They eventually moved to a new house, a place where the memories of Zeno could not find them, and a year later, Ify found out she was pregnant again. This time, there was no sister from the village. There was only a family that had learnt that while kindness is a virtue, you must always shine your eyes to see who is standing in your shadow,